Now, many may want to cancel me for what I'm about to say, but for the sake of my mentality, I must do it. My next C tier is... What's up guys, True Warrior here. And today, I want to bring something different to the channel. So far, I've shared my opinion on various Resident Evil topics, from some characters, a game, a movie, and a series that I don't want to remember ever again.
Sorry.
But this time, I want to share my own tier list of Resident Evil games, ranking them from S tier to F tier. F tier consisting of games I would never touch again. C tier including games I wouldn't want to play for a long time. B tier is for games I don't mind replaying. The A tier consisting of games I would replay. And finally, S tier is for the games I would play over and over again. Before we begin, I would like to say two things. First, I hope you all had a great holiday season even though we are already near the end of February. And second, I haven't played every Resident Evil game, so I will exclude those I haven't had the honor of playing yet. For example, I haven't played the original Resident Evil, or Survivor, or Gaiden, or Survivor 2, or Dead Aim, or Outbreak 2, or Umbrella Chronicles, or Darkside Chronicles, neither the Mercenaries 3D, or Operation Raccoon City, or Umbrella Corps. And I think that's it. With that being said, let us begin. Starting with the F tiers, I'll go ahead and put Resident Evil Resistance. This asymmetrical multiplayer game, included for free with Resident Evil 3 Remake, is similar to Dead by Daylight. 4 survivors against a mastermind who controls traps, weapons, zombies, and the franchise's classic BOWs. Except for Yataville, which is a new inclusion that turned out to be completely trash, dying in 5 seconds. Although the game started well, Resistance quickly fell apart due to poor balance, lack of support from both Capcom and Neobards, and an overwhelming number of cheaters on PC. These issues ruined matchmaking to the point where the game on PC would freeze while trying to find matches due to cheaters. It's a shame because I genuinely saw potential in this game, and thanks to it, I met several friends with whom I still keep in touch today. Unfortunately, the game ended up being a disaster. But if you think Resistance was bad, let me tell you about a game that suffered a worse fate than Resistance. Resident Evil Reverse. Capcom's attempt to create a Fortnite-like experience for Resident Evil failed even faster than Resistance. Reverse wasn't available when Resident Evil Village launched. In fact, the game was released 1 year later after Village's launch alongside the Shadow of Rose DLC. While Resistance lasted for at least 6 months, Reverse didn't remain relevant for even 3 months. With little content and a late release, it's hard to imagine a bigger failure within the franchise. With that being said, I think these two games are my only F tiers due to how they turned out. Going to the C tier, we start off with Resident Evil Code Veronica. I don't consider this a bad game, but it has more negatives than positives in my opinion. Chris and Claire Redfield as well as Wesker's return are highlights. But on the other hand, there are frustrating enemies in this game like the Bandersnatches. Those enemies straight out of The Simpsons that constantly damage you from a distance by stretching their arms. Then there's that Antarctica hallway where you get poisoned by a moth every time you walk through. And sure, I know blue herbs exist to cure poison, but guess what? The same blue herbs are in that berry hallway as well, meaning you get poisoned every time you try to pick one up. However, the thing that annoys me the most in Code Veronica is one particular character, Steve Burnside. A character that I always keep locked in that suffering room for 30 minutes every time I play Code Veronica. And if that wasn't enough, I feel like this guy is ridiculously obsessed with Claire. I mean, I don't blame him. Claire is a very attractive woman. But if you stare at her 24/7, try to kiss her while she sweeps, and even ogle her in Darkside Chronicles when she isn't looking, my friend, that's no longer love. That's straight up obsession. When I first played Code Veronica, I don't know if it was a bug or something I forgot to do, but when playing as Chris, there's a part where you need to collect some chemicals. However, the game wouldn't let me pick them up, it only gave me a text message every time I examined them. Because of that, I couldn't progress and ended up dropping the game for a whole year before finally finishing it. Overall, Code Veronica has memorable moments, but it's not a game I want to replay anytime soon. Now, many may want to cancel me for what I'm about to say, but for the sake of my mentality, I must do it. My next C tier is Resident Evil 4.
Whatever he's saying, he is lying!
Yes, I know, many will say, but it's one of the best Resident Evil games ever. What the fuck is wrong with you? Now, before you set me on fire like that cop at the beginning of the game, let me clarify. Is it a bad game? Not at all. In fact, I liked it more thanks to the remake. But there are several things that make it hard for me to replay. First of them being Luis Serra. And you may ask, what's wrong with Luis? Nothing, but his story in the original feels incomplete. Second, QuickTime events that I'm not a fan of them, especially those that force you to restart an entire section if you mess up and die. And the last thing that makes me not want to come back to this game is Ashley Graham.
How rude!
Throughout my gaming experience, I have never encountered a character that makes me want to uninstall a game. I don't mind escort missions, but at least make the character I'm protecting bearable. She does nothing to help, dies in the dumbest ways possible because she randomly stands still, and you constantly have to monitor her safety. And after saving her countless times, she wants to reward you with some overtime. Yeah, no thank you. Whenever I do replay Resident Evil 4, I play it on the easiest difficulty just to finish it as quickly as possible and never hear that woman scream ever again. Going to the B tier, we start off with Resident Evil Revelations. This game has interesting moments such as the final battle against Jack Norman, the interior of the Queen Zenobia ship, and several new characters that caught my attention, like Raymond, Parker, Quentin Keith, especially these last two who made me laugh every time they appeared. However, Revelations never managed to fully captivate me. O'Brien felt meh to me, while Jessica turned out to be one of those characters that I would delete from the game if I had the option. I don't like characters who constantly flirt with the protagonist just to get attention. Although I have to admit that she does save Chris several times and at least helps him in his missions. It's an entertaining game to chill with from time to time. Resident Evil Revelations 2. This game features Claire Redfield and Barry Burton, two of my favorite characters, and a darker atmosphere than its predecessor. One part of Revelations 2 that I disliked was how they wrote Claire. But to avoid going into too much detail, I have a video explaining that. Thankfully, they didn't do the same to Barry, who, for me, ended up being one of the best written characters in the game and the best father in Resident Evil. Well, aside from Ethan Winters. As for Moira and Natalia's a better companion than Ashley and Steve combined. Enough said. And the most memorable thing I took from Moira was the following line. Resident Evil 3 Remake. I may be one of the few who thinks that Resident Evil 3 Remake is a good game, but if we're talking about whether it's a good remake, it falls short. Visually it looks great. The voice acting was fantastic, especially Jill, Carlos, and Nikolai's, and it's a fun game to speedrunning. However, many things I loved about the original Resident Evil 3 are missing here. They significantly reduced the explorable areas of Raccoon City, including the clock tower, the park, and the dead factory, which was replaced by NESP 2.0. Nemesis' presence felt lower compared to the original. And what frustrated me the most about this game, and forgive me for raising my voice, how the hell did Barry not show up in the end? Resident Evil 5. This is one of those games that offers a different experience depending on whether you play it solo or with someone else. But in this case, I'm rating it based on a solo experience. On a positive note, the QTEs on this game are not as annoying as in Resident Evil 4's. Sheva is more competent character than Ashley, and my favorite protagonist, Albert Wesker, makes his final appearance before Netflix overexploded him. And finally, Resident Evil 5 gave birth to one of the franchise's most iconic memes.
Just hold on, Sheva.
However, I think we can all agree that what makes Resident Evil 5 miserable is your AI partner's intelligence, wasting healing items randomly and sometimes not helping in fights. But if I had to choose between playing Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 4, I'd much rather have Sheva Alomar than Ashley.
It's an honor.
Resident Evil 6. Like Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6 is another game that's more enjoyable when played with someone else. Fortunately, Resident Evil 6 has a much better AI companion. I don't mind that this game leans more towards action than horror. After all, there are horror moments in this game, especially in Leon and Ada's stories. Overall, I didn't find Resident Evil 6 to be a bad game. It has a decent story, especially Chris's campaign. Rest in peace, Piers Nivens. And to my surprise, I even enjoyed Jake and Sherry's campaign. The character I didn't really enjoy for some reason was Helena. She's an annoying and I don't dislike her, but there's just something about her that doesn't click with me. Maybe it's time to revisit Resident Evil 6 in the near future? Resident Evil 0. Despite how frustrating this game can be, I have a guilty pleasure for Resident Evil 0. Not just because Rebecca appears in it, but also because Billy is a character with great potential, even though his story could have been handled better and the graphics for its time were stunning. Is Resident Evil 0 the best game? No, but I would rather play it more than Resident Evil 4. For those of you who don't know, there's a mod that adds item boxes to the game, giving players a break from constantly moving items around. Massive thanks to the person who made that mod, and I hope life rewards you greatly. For the A tiers, I'm gonna kill two birds in one stone with what I'm about to say. For me, Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village are on the same level. I think each one does certain things better than the other. In the case of Resident Evil 7, it has better antagonists and more content, while Village has a greater variety of enemies, a better second half, Heisenberg's factory being superior to the ship, and a more entertaining final boss, because, let's be real, Evelyn barely does anything compared to Miranda. When it comes to horror, both games have moments that really got my heart racing. I remember when I faced Marguerite for the first time in Resident Evil 7, I was so scared that I stopped playing for a whole week before coming back just to burn her alive. As for Village, the Benevento house baby didn't get much of a reaction out of me since I already knew about its existence when I played it. But the mannequins from Shadows of Rose?
I know.
Whoever designed that segment of the Benevento house, please, give them the budget to create an entire horror game. As for the S tiers, I'll start off with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 2 Remake. I won't lie, it was difficult for me to rank both the original and its remake. It's hard to say which one is better. With that being said, I think each one excels in different areas. The original has more enemy variety and its final level takes place in a laboratory. Meanwhile, the remake features slight story changes compared to the original, with the final level taking place in a nest and the enemies are far more aggressive, especially Mr. X, whose footsteps echo through the hallways as you try to hide, making you shiver in your skin. Both games, despite telling the same core story, never bore you for a second. Resident Evil 2 introduces Raccoon City, Leon, and Claire, one becoming Capcom's golden boy while the other falls victim to poor writing. Lastly, both games feature incredible end credits music.
Hey, it's up to us to take out Umbrella.
You guys can adopt me.
Adopt you.
We can get a puppy
Puppy.
and a parrot.
Perfect.
I always wanted pets, but my mom said they're too messy.
Next up on this boring Wednesday is a song to get your blood pumping.
Resident Evil HD, the first Resident Evil game I've ever played. I still remember closing my eyes while going down to the kitchen, thinking a zombie might jump out at me. This game truly delivers fear, especially that early moment when you encounter your first zombie and instinctively want to run for your life. The soundtrack is equally remarkable, and like Resident Evil 0, the graphics for its time were stunning. All this on a GameCube? Additionally, the variety of endings in this game, depending on whether you're playing as Chris or Jill, encourages multiple playthroughs. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. As I previously mentioned, one of the things I loved about the original that I wish had been implemented in the remake was how explorable Raccoon City was, including areas like the Clock Tower, the park, and the Dead Factory. Nemesis appears more frequently compared to the remake, and the life selection system where players' choices affect the progression of the game is something I find incredibly engaging. It allows for different routes to advance to the story. This game has an incredible soundtrack. It was my favorite in the franchise until, spoiler alert, Resident Evil 4 Remake came along and stole the crown from my beloved game. Sorry, but it had to happen. And with that, we arrive at my favorite game in the franchise, Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now you might be wondering, if you hated the original so much, how did the remake end up being your favorite? Well, because everything I disliked about the original was vastly improved in the remake. Luis got much better character development, being revealed as one of the scientists responsible for Nemesis' creation. The QTEs are far less annoying in this game, and they're actually enjoyable, especially during the fight against Krauser. As for Ashley, she went from being an unbearable character to someone who genuinely wants to do everything possible to help Leon. Her feelings for him also feel more sincere and not forced. A perfect example of this is in the final scene where she offers Leon a job as her bodyguard, but he turns her down, though she might need a lesson or two in knife combat first. A genuine conversation between the two while staying in character. As for you guys, what's your Resident Evil tier list? I'd like to know in the comments section down below. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, and with that said, this is True Warrior signing off with a GG well played.